Hello, everyone. My name is Jeremy Morton. I'm the CEO of Expert TA. I just want to thank everyone for taking the time to join us today to learn about this resource that we've been building for introductory astronomy. We are lucky to be joined by the lead author, Andrew Fracknoy, of the OpenStax Astronomy textbook. We're going to be going through and spending some time talking about both the book as well as the collection of assessment resources and other digital materials to be associated with it. I want to briefly go over the agenda for today's meeting. We're going to spend an hour together. We're going to start off with introductions, webinar logistics. If you're not familiar with GoToWebinar, you should have a control tool somewhere that you can access, and one of the tabs close to the bottom says chat. Throughout today's presentation, feel free to click on that, and you're able to type in questions if you have any. We have a team of people here that will be monitoring those questions. They can often get a response to you immediately, and we'll probably send out that response to the entire audience. And for some of those questions, they may interrupt me to stop and answer it in the system if that is appropriate, or we may answer some of these at the end of the session. Okay, we'll be spending 5 or 10 minutes doing a brief overview of the OpenStax Astronomy book. Andrew Fracknoy is going to handle that. We're going to be talking a little bit about academic integrity. We were able to connect with a number of you leading up to this webinar, and because of COVID-19, everyone being thrust into an online-only mode of instruction this past spring, and many of you being in a position where you'll have to offer online classes in the fall, apparently academic integrity and being able to deliver exams in a way that you have confidence in the outcomes is something that you're all interested in learning more about. We have built tools that are able to help, and I'm going to be showing you these as we go through and take a tour of the system. We're certainly interested to show you the astronomy specific question types and resources that we built up, but we're also going to be talking about academic integrity as we do so. And then at the end, we're going to have 10 to 15 minutes to answer any questions that you have. Okay, at this point, we'd like to move over and do the brief overview of the OpenStax Astronomy textbook, and I will hand this off to Andrew Fracknoy to do that. Go ahead, Andrew.
All right, well, thank you very much, Jeremy, and welcome everyone. I know from the list that I received earlier that there are some of you who I know and a number of you who are new to the book. So let me introduce the OpenStax book, and then you'll hear more about this exciting tool that we've been working on that goes with it. No, stay back with the previous slide for a second, Jeremy, if you would. So I am only one of the 3 authors, the 3 senior authors of the book. I'm joined by David Morrison and Sydney Wolf, who have been my longtime collaborators writing astronomy textbooks. As you probably know, this is a completely free and open source online textbook, which is available in a variety of formats and can be downloaded or used online. And I just want to say that we were not the only ones working on this. We had the help of a couple of dozen people from the astronomy community, including researchers and longtime veteran educators, looking at both the content of the book to make sure that it's up to date and appropriate, and then lots of educators looking at the pedagogy and making sure that we had the kind of materials to go with each chapter that would help students learn. So, of course, if you haven't looked at the book, we invite you to do that, but you'll be seeing that the book is integrated into this Expert TA tool, which is a very handy thing for you and the students. I'll just say, if we can go to the next slide, that in writing the book, we've tried to include some touches of humor, which are sometimes badly needed in the middle of an intense course for non-science students. And we've also tried to use language that is an everyday kind of language appropriate to the non-science majors that are most of the people in our Astro 101 course. We have a variety of everyday analogies and questions and connections from the experience and from the sort of interdisciplinary background of the students. So we do encourage you to take a look at the book. I'm happy to report that with its free price, the next slide, we now have over 900 instructors around the country who have adopted the book, and more are coming online all the time as we all juggle the many responsibilities we have to students in this new era. We've had at least 300,000 students who have used it. That number may be larger because not everyone registers the full extent of how the book is being used in their college or university or high school. But with that many students having used the book, the next slide, the publisher estimates that we've saved at least $25 million on student textbook costs just as a result of this astronomy textbook. So that's a very gratifying result, and that will only continue to grow as we go along. I've given talks about this book and this whole project, which is part of a national project to develop introductory textbooks in every field that are free. I've given talks about this at conferences, and the number one comment that I've received is that although sure they'd love to adopt a textbook that's free for the students, the problem is that they are very much attached to some class management system that went with their textbook. And without such a management system, it will be a lot more work for them to adopt the OpenStax book. So this is why we've partnered with Expert TA to develop a usable, friendly, and affordable class management system to go with the textbook. So that's the introduction. I'm happy to answer questions about the book at the end of the session, but I'm going to hand things back now to Jeremy to tell you more about the project of the class management system.
Thank you so much, Andrew, for that overview of the book. I can talk now about how we've designed and integrated these materials into Expert TA. We have collaborated with Andrew throughout the process. He's been critical in the design and development of not just the content, but also offering guidance on the technology as well. So the ebook is available directly from within Expert TA so that students do not have to leave our environment to go to multiple places to access material. That's important. There's a one-stop shop for them. And the integrated part about this is that when they're in working assignment on a particular problem, there are links that lead to a specific chapter or section, whatever is appropriate, that's associated with the materials covered in that problem. So there really is a connectivity between these resources. For the problem coverage, we have over 1,100 multiple choice questions. This is the official test bank that was written by Andrew and is available at OpenStax website. However, we're the only version of that that's available in an automatically accessible form. And as we've designed those, there is some randomization that occurs in these problems, for example, with the ordering of the options to be selected. So there's some enhancements that take place even in those. In addition to that, there are 200 advanced graphical questions that we've made that are very engaging and compelling. You're going to get to see these as we go through the tour of the system today. They are questions like matching, ranking, drag and drop labeling of schematics, sorting or classification, and then there's a very creative question type that we have on this technology that is fill in the blank reading exercises. We all want students to read the book, but it's quite commonly difficult to convince them to do that. And this is a way that you can put these reading assignments into an assignable form and hold the students truly accountable. And so you're going to get to see what these look like as we go through the system today. All of these questions have been designed by Andrew and implemented into our system and are also being reviewed by other astronomers. In addition to those, we have 290 figuring for yourself questions. Not all of you do calculations is part of your instruction, but for those who do, these are available in a flexible form that you're going to see that you can add into assignments. So at this point, let's go into the Expert TA system and take a look at the environment. Okay, when an instructor or a student logs into the system, they see a screen that looks like this. In the area at the top, this is where they can access what we call additional class resources. Our primary function has always been as an online homework system, so we think about the assignments as the primary thing they're coming for. But there are, again, the ability for us to link to additional class resources. I've got two in this particular class. Expert TA Astronomy with OpenStax. This is where, if a student clicks it, they can access a page here with a clickable table of contents and not have to leave our environment. They can access the full book at once and get that entire PDF, or all of these sublinks are clickable as well if a student would just like to view chapter 1 or even a specific section. When you're downloading something as large as the book, it does take a little bit longer, and so for quick reference, if a student just wants to see material for a specific section, that gives them a smaller document and the download happens a little quicker. And this also, segmenting it out this way, allows for us to provide those problem-specific links that can click over to these smaller PDFs that are appropriate with just that content. You can see that when I clicked on this resource, it opened in a new tab so that I have not lost my place here in the class management area. Okay, we also have in this class OpenStax Astronomy, which is a link out to the official page that has additional instructor resources and other things like that. We have additional resources if you're interested. We could talk about those for astronomy. For example, the set simulations associated with this material, we have problems built out around those. Okay, down below, you can see a list of all the assignments that have been created in this mock class. Let me make a couple of comments. Yes, we have a full suite of class management tools, but we're not going to be seeing all of those today because we're going to be spending only about 30 to 35 minutes in this area. Of course, you have to have the ability to view and manage a class roster in any online homework system or class management system. But this is not something that differentiates Expert TA. What we'll be showing today are the items that do make us stand out. And if you find that compelling, then we would be happy to answer any questions that you have or set up a separate meeting to take a more in-depth tour of the system for things like student registration, LMS integration, managing your roster, those kinds of activities. Okay, for the assignments that have been created, there's a Learning Expert TA assignment. This is something that we highly recommend every instructor use. We've designed video-based problems where at the top of the problem, the students watch a short video that covers everything they need to know in order to accomplish tasks in our system, how to access their grades, how to work specific question types. If you have your students go through these assignments, watch the videos, and answer the associated questions, you're going to get fewer emails because the students will have a stronger understanding of how to navigate around in our system. Okay, after that, we have homeworks 1 through 5, and we have an exam. We're able to offer both, and at some point we'll may be able to talk about just the sheer number of schools that used us for online exams, including final exams, during the past spring semester when online only was the main mode of operation for most schools. Okay, for an assignment, you can easily see the weight, all of the dates associated with the assignment. If it was a timed assignment, you can see the number of minutes students had. And then you can see the instructor grade preference template that's associated with that assignment. This is something that we're going to take a look at here because each instructor has his or her own philosophy differences for how they think that students should be graded. And you need to be able to understand how much customization and flexibility is there. And again, we're also going to be talking about academic integrity. From the main global menu at the top here, under instructor, there are items associated with both grade preferences and academic integrity preferences. First, let's go see how you can customize how students interact with your assignments. When you first get an instructor account, you would only have instructor default as a template. However, you have the ability to create as many templates as you like and name them whatever is appropriate. I've created here a homework and an exam template. When I click between these, the structure of the page to the right is not going to change. It's only going to be the parameters inside of these fields that change. Since many of the questions available to you are the instructor test bank, I'll scroll down first to the bottom, and we'll talk about the fact that multiple choice questions, the grading and the number of choices available is a calculated result. So the number of tries that you get as a student are the number of items that can be selected between -1, so that the students can arrive at the answer by the process of elimination. And then the default deduction is 100 divided by those number of choices -1. And if you think about that, it will make sense as to why that's applied. For things like true, false, it makes sense to give the students only one try. For other questions like the drag and drop labeling, the fill in the blank reading exercises, there'll be enough items and enough buckets that a student could take many attempts in order to complete a problem. And that's where this section at the top would apply. The number of allowed submission attempts can be set by you, the instructor. And whenever a student puts in an incorrect answer, you can also declare the deduction amount that will correspond to that. You get to decide whether the students have access to hints and feedback at all, and if so, what the deduction values are for accessing those pieces of information, which of course can be 0 if you wanted to give that to them for free. If you were offering a homework assignment, you may want to allow access to hints and feedback. In an exam, you probably wouldn't. Similarly, you can control whether the student gets to see what the correct answer was. Imagine that they used up all 5 tries on a drag and drop labeling question and still did not get to the right answer. If that was part A of a multi-step question, you may want to let them see what the right answer was before they move on so they can build the rest of the problem on a solid foundation. But again, all of these things are controllable by you, the instructor, to meet your own preferences. A few other things that I'll point out. If you allow late work, you can control that and specify the amount of credit students will earn. You can either have this be a flat percentage or something that changes over time, either per hour or per day, where the amount of credit goes down the later the work gets. You have the ability to do randomized variables. This would be mostly for calculation questions and randomized phrases. These are critical elements for the academic integrity component, and we'll talk in more detail about that later as to why those are so important. And then finally, since many of you may be in a position where you're offering exams online in the fall, we do have a mode that can be entered into to declare whether the student knows if their submission was correct or not. And on an exam, you would probably want to set this to be no, so that the student, as they're working the exam, are not sure whether or not the answer they put in was correct or not. They won't know until after the assignment has closed out, and then they would be able to find out what was and wasn't correct. This keeps students from being able to share answers between each other. You will see other things that may not apply. For example, free body diagram proportionality. Expert TA has been around for 8 years, and we've primarily serviced introductory physics courses. We're used departmentally at schools like Princeton University, who's used us since 2012, and we've been adopted departmentally at schools like Cal Berkeley. And so If you're interested in our physics solution, it's broadly used as well. We know many of you teach both astronomy and physics courses at some of the schools, and so if that's of interest to you, please let us know about that as well. This should give you some idea of the level of customization that you can do through grade preferences. Let's now talk about academic integrity, since it is a relevant topic in this day and age. Here on this page, one of the things that you see that's static information is our syllabus recommendation. We feel like not enough instructors let students know from the beginning what resources are and are not allowed on specific assignments, both homework and exams. Let students know early and then remind them often. These are the in-system features from here down. You have the ability as an instructor to turn this on, and if you do, the students will be presented with a page every time they open the assignment, and it can include two pieces of information: text that you can customize so that you can type in your own class policies or honor code. And you can see in mine, I've said no Chegg and no course hero. And then you can also choose to show the expert TA terms of policy, which indicates that students are expressly forbidden from taking copyright images of our problems and posting those out to places like Yahoo Answers or Chegg.com. And then they can lose access to their expert TA account if it's found that they've done this. And these two things do serve as deterrents when students read those. Further deterrents are in-assignment pieces of information that are specific to students and can identify those students. And you can choose to turn those on as well. It's the tracking ID and student name. You'll see this in the context of taking an assignment. I want to, before we move on, state that we're much more excited about the educational tools that we've built, the question types that actually help students learn astronomy. But this is a required component that cannot be ignored, because no matter how good the educational exercise is that you design, if students are not actually going through that exercise, if they're going to the internet to get an answer, they're not benefiting, and it's not a recipe for them understanding the material. And so this is not our favorite topic, but it is a necessary evil that we have to make sure that we keep our eyes on. Okay, at this point, I will say that both grade preferences and academic integrity preferences are things that you can create one time at the beginning of the semester, and then they will be conveniently available in drop-downs when you go to create an assignment. And that's what I'd like to do now. As an instructor, you would spend a lot of time creating assignments for your students, and so you need to know what that experience feels like. From the main class menu in the top right, you can see Create Class Assignment. When I choose this, you'll see the interface we have. We've been told for years now that we really got this interface right. It's intuitive. Everything you need is in one place. I'm going to make now homework 6 because we had homeworks 1 through 5. I could change the assignment weight if this was an exam or a quiz and it needed to be different than homework. I can control the weights of assignments. I can choose the grade preference template that I've created up here that I would like to use. And I can also apply, if I like, the academic integrity template. To the right, you have the dates of the assignment. The publish date is the first date that the students will be able to see the assignment in the list. If it's a homework, most instructors make this the first day of the semester so the students can always see what's coming. But if you've got a pop quiz, you can easily push this out in the future, and students won't even know that that assignment exists. The start and due and end dates. Any work done between the start date and the due date, students will earn full credit for. Any work between the due and the end date, they'll earn that late work percentage schema that you've applied, whether it's a flat rate or changes over time. If you need to change any of these values, you can easily do that with the drop-down controls. So I could make the due date out to July 1st, and then I could give an entire additional week where students could receive late work credit. Okay, how do you get problems into the assignment? You'll see your list of books here. For many of you, this will just be the main collection of astronomy questions, but we are going to make it to where you can put your own questions in, and if so, you'll have a custom book that will show up in your list that has all the problems that either you've created or that you've submitted to us to put in for you. We can talk a little more about that because I know that we all feel strongly about community designed efforts, and that's something that Andrew wants to speak to in a little bit. We certainly would encourage instructors to help us to submit well-written questions. Again, we'll talk more about that later. So when you access the chapters dropdown, these are all the chapters exactly as they appear in the OpenStax Astronomy textbook. And I'm just going to choose chapter 4. Down below, you can see each of the sections. You can see that as an instructor, you have the ability to see the answers. We've put these problems into buckets: the advanced graphical questions, the numeric figuring for yourself, and then all of the multiple choice test bank questions. At this point, I'll click Expand All. And now you can see the preview that you get of the problem. You get the full statement. You can see all of the choices. And in green, because I've selected Show Answer, I can see the correct answer. At this point, as I add a problem, we can see it added into the list up here. I'll add additional questions, and they'll simply show up in the stack with a numeric incrementation there for the problem number. So this is the way in which I could shop through the test bank and add these problems into the assignment. I could also do things like, if I've scrolled away from where a problem was, I could mouse over to be reminded with that pop-up of what that problem was. I could easily delete a problem, and I can also drag and move problems around to reorder them in an assignment. Okay, let's say that these are the only multiple choice questions that I want. I will minimize that section, and now we can see the figuring for yourself questions. Where possible, we have done randomization of numbers. Of course, with things like the diameter of the Earth, that's something that you don't randomize, or any other constant. But when possible, those numbers are randomized, and those show up in a reddish-orange font color to make sure that's clear to you. And then for those answers, you actually get to see the algorithmic calculation that's done to get to the right answer. And so here, I'll just add in a few figuring for yourself questions. And then finally, let's look down at our advanced graphical questions. There's a good variety in this particular chapter. These are examples of fill-in-the-blank reading exercise in the preview that you'll see here. And that all of you may not be able to fully read this with the font size that you've got, but when not doing a webinar, it comes through very clearly on your own screen. So at this point, I'll just add in a few of these. Okay, because it's important and related to academic integrity, let me talk about question rules. Let me go back up to Dr. Test Bank. As I've added additional questions, they've simply gone onto the bottom of the stack as the next problem, but heavily used by schools offering final exams in the spring semester. Question so that every student has the same copy of the exam. Let me show you how easy it is to accomplish that. Instead of the radio button up here being at the top, if I click on the radio button by problem 1, I could now add additional questions that are very similar in concept to that, and they're added off to the right here. So all of these are problem number 1. And similarly, I can do this through subsequent problems. Okay, let's just try this. I want to make sure that if we're going to proceed, that people are able to hear. That's important. So I'll just check back in one more time. Robbie, has this improved? I changed over to speaker rather than headset.
Yes. This is Andrew. It's definitely better now. Keep going.
Okay. Okay, so at this point, we do have an assignment that's created, and without going down into every class management feature that you have, I will show extensions. So imagine that you have a student who needs extra time because they were sick or had to travel to a sporting event. You could come in and select that, and I'll note that we did make all of the students in this class famous astronomers. So the dates can all be flexibly changed to accommodate any individual student. You can do this for as many students as need be. This is the full suite of class management tools that I was referring to. And again, if you have any questions about that and you find what you're seeing here compelling, then feel free to follow up with us and we'll answer any other questions that you have about that. At this point, I'm going to move out, save and exit. And now this homework 6 is available and it is waiting for your students and can be worked on as soon as that start date rolls around. I'm really excited to get into this area at this point and do example questions. Let me just put my phone right there. And please do give me feedback if the audio quality does start to suffer again. Okay, example questions. This is where we have spent the majority of our work, and we're really excited to get your impression about this. So the honor code here, agree and continue. This is an example, again, no Chegg, no course hero, of the academic integrity suite turned on. So now I'm into the take assignment area. And before we get started with the astronomy content, let's talk about the in-assignment deterrence. Here's the username. Here's a copyright at the expert TA and a tracking ID that's specific to this user and on this particular problem. If this were to be posted out to Yahoo Answers or Chegg.com, and this information was not blacked out, then that information would track directly back over to this student. And then I want to show one final thing. I want to pull up a folder here, and I just want to open up Watermark. I want to show you something that's very clever that we've done. Here is an example of a problem where the information has been blacked out because someone's trying to bypass those security measures. Well, what they don't know, and this led to dozens of people who tried to break the rules in the spring semester being caught, is that right here in this area in 42-point font, one color value off of white, we have put the student username again. And when someone takes a screen capture, posts it up to Chegg, we can download that. We can run it through a process that replaces that color value of one value off of white, and that student's information is revealed. And again, this was very effective at identifying violators in the spring semester. And students now at schools are being told up front that things like this are being done, and we see the rates of students trying to break the rules go down tremendously. Okay, moving on to the astronomy content itself. Here's an example of a figuring for yourself question. The interface that we have below provides a calculator for the student. However, if the student wants to use his or her own calculator and simply put in a number, then that is something that would be accepted as well. They don't have to type this in a formulaic fashion. We also are making a version of this palette that doesn't have the trigonometric functions, that is a more simple calculator version, more appropriate. And so that's something that will be available for fall, just a more simple palette. At this point, let me show you an example. Here, the amateur astronomer is upgrading their aperture, and the final area divided by the original area is what should be used. But I'm going to use 25 centimeters here in the calculation rather than the 0.25 meters, and click Submit. It says specific feedback is available, and now the feedback, when accessed by the student, says you appear to have used the value of 25 centimeters. The units must be consistent. So the student will be prompted to read more closely and to get things into the right units. This is something that would be a specific mistake that we anticipate, but programmatically, we check for things being off by a factor of 2, 10, forgetting to take square roots. Common numeric calculation mistakes are looked after by the program itself always. And so the students have access to a lot of feedback that can help them for small mistakes. This kind of thing is incredibly important because many students are working these problems at 10 o'clock on a Sunday night when there's no office hours or access to help. And if they are doing something wrong and they're not knowing what that is, they're handing in papers that are going to be graded over the course of the next week, and they don't get feedback until much later, cognitively, they've moved on to their English term paper. When they get that feedback, it's less meaningful. And in fact, there are studies that show that if you put a homework problem onto an exam exactly as it was in the homework, that commonly students make the same mistakes that they made in the first time that they did it on the homework because that's what they have ownership in. If, however, you can provide these kinds of nudging feedbacks to get them back on the right track and they can get to a right answer, they have ownership in arriving at that, and it's much more valuable than finding out what the right answer was 3 or 4 days or a week later. So that's one of the benefits of immediate instantaneous feedback. Let's go down now and look at an example of our advanced graphical questions here in the form of a fill-in-the-blank reading exercise. Note how many more items there are than blanks to be filled in. That's something that makes the student think very hard about this and read closely. I'm going to complete this, and I'm going to make some mistakes along the way. So the HR diagram is named after astronomers. Let's put in Hubble, even though that's not correct. Let's come in and put the vertical axis being temperature, the horizontal axis being luminosity, the diagonal region where most of the stars fall, we'll refer to that as the luminosity sequence. And for the last item, let's get this right. Let's put in white dwarfs. And so at this point, when I click submit, it says specific feedback is available. And when I click to select that, you can see a number of feedback statements provided in the bottom right here. The first one says, remember the region where most stars fall goes diagonally on the diagram, and that's emphasized. So the student would then need to read back through to figure out, and the diagonal region would let them know, and they would probably look a little closer and fix this and make it the main sequence. I can see there's one here about luminosity, does play a role. And if I read down further, I can see there's one about, and so it looks like we've switched these two. Now I'm just going to switch this and make it correct. Let's say that at this point, the student has read, they feel like maybe they've addressed everything. Even though there is a comment here about Hubble's work focusing more on galaxies. So now when we do this, it still says specific feedback is available. And now the only remaining item that needs to be addressed is about Hubble's work. The student could read the material a little closer and recognize that it was Hertzsprung. At this point, they would wind up getting the correct answer. The credit that they got was a high B based on my applied instructor grade preferences. But remember, you can adjust those values for deductions to make this whatever you think would be appropriate for this kind of interaction. Some of you may feel like it's a low A or maybe even a mid C. You can change the parameters to accomplish your own grading philosophy, and we'd be happy to provide recommendations. We actually do have recommendations already on our website we could point you to, or we could talk to you specifically about how to get things set up to accomplish what you're trying to. Okay, this is an example of this technology for a fill-in-the-blank reading exercise. Let's look at a drag and drop labeling of a schematic. Here, we're being asked about the highest red shift, blue shift, and neither red nor blue shift. And one thing to point out here is that not all of the buckets are used. So there can be like we saw in this problem. Up here, extra items that don't get used, but we can also design questions that have extra buckets that don't get used. And so here, I'm going to make a mistake and say that the highest red shift occurs down here. The highest blue shift is in the upper left, and neither red nor blue shift I'll get right and I'll put there. When I click submit, again, specific feedback is available, and it says blue shifts are not associated with motion away, and red shifts are not associated with motion towards the observer. So at this point, I'm not going to complete this question. You get the idea of how students are interacting with problems. What I'd like to do, though, is just show a few more examples of question types. So we had just a moment ago a reading exercise about the HR diagram. Here's a problem that actually had students go through the task of labeling that and putting white dwarfs and other things like that in the right place. Here's a problem that, let me zoom out just a little bit. Here's a problem that involves labeling the different areas of the sun. This is involve a diagram that shows the light curve of a pair of stars that form an eclipsing binary. And there's a graph that indicates brightness with 1, 2, 3, and 4 labeled. And the students are supposed to put those items into the right buckets up here with the motion shown. And then finally, I want to show you two that are interesting. And I want to go back over to the PowerPoint and talk about the number of problems we have. We have over 200 advanced graphical. We have labeling, sorting, ranking. All of these are in already, and they're being used even in summer classes that are currently going on. However, some of them are about to get a really nice upgrade or facelift, and I want to demonstrate that through these two problems. This one is just labeling the planets in the solar system, and you can see the item to be drug around is a box containing the word Earth. For the last one here, this is a ranking question. And again, I'm dragging around a label that says Mars or the Andromeda galaxy. These are fine, they accomplish the task of getting the knowledge from the students, but they're less immersive. And so we've just done a graphical upgrade of our questions, and they'll look more like this. So the students will be able to, for ranking questions, this one is asking for the moons of Jupiter to be placed in order of least dense to most dense. And now students will be able to actually drag those items around and order them using an interface like what you see here. And this is arguably more aesthetically pleasing, but more importantly, it's more immersive so that the student feels more engaged in the content. And then similar to the solar system question, rather than dragging a label for Earth, you can actually drag around the image and put it into the right place. And so these are upgrades that are going to be coming very soon, and we're very happy about that. Okay, this is a good stopping point for the types of questions. I only have one other thing that I want to show in the system. We'll go to frequently asked questions, and then we'll open it up for the question and answer session. Back in the system as an instructor, it's going to be important for you to be able to access your grades. From the class menu, I can choose View Manage Class Grades. And here I'm presented with something, I'll zoom back in a little bit, that just looks like a standard spreadsheet that you'd be used to. I have the ability, if I'm not doing full LMS integration, I can export this as a CSV, and then let's just open this up to show you what that looks like when we do. Open on a different monitor here. So it's easy for you to export your grades as an instructor. And if you set this up right to where the student number matches what you have in Blackboard or Canvas, it's a 2 to 3 minute process to export grades from Expert TA and import them into Canvas. That's if you're choosing not to do LMS integration. Also, from within our grade sheet, numbers are nice, but what if this student here contacts you and says that they're not sure they understand why their second answer for problem 2 was, for one of the problems on homework 2 is wrong. You can click on this numeric value and it will take you to the detailed work by this student. It will show you all of their submission attempts. It will show you the grade that they got. You can do things like apply a grade override and make a comment. This is just letting you know that you have not only access to your numeric grades, but to the detailed work that students did to lead to those grades. And you have the ability to have a lot of control there as well. That certainly is an important thing that instructors need to know about. Okay, that's the tour of the system. And then now coming out here to this area, let's close out with frequently asked questions and other system information. The cost is $35 per student per semester or per quarter. At the high school level, we have $15 per student per academic year. We do have LMS integration with Blackboard, Canvas, and other platforms coming soon, hopefully by the coming fall semester for Brightspace, D2L, Moodle, but we certainly at this point can't guarantee that. In the near future, they will be available hopefully by fall. And what comes along with LMS integration is single sign-on as well as grade sync. And let me just describe those. You create your Expert TA assignments within Expert TA, but then you have a way to provide links to those from within Canvas or Blackboard. Students never worry about logging into Expert TA. They only go into Blackboard or Canvas. They see Homework 1 link and they click on it. That routes them over into Expert TA to the right assignment. And there's a small piece of information that Canvas hands off that lets Expert TA know where to send grades back to. The student does their work within the Expert TA system, and as they do it, the grades are automatically ported back over into your Canvas or Blackboard grade sheet, all in one place. Okay, and then finally, the ability to add your own questions. We have the options of instructor input, and we can do this in a couple of different ways. We can make a dedicated area for your problems to live that you and perhaps your colleagues only have access to, or you can submit these in such a way that our team can develop them and can also put them in your area. Our team can help out always, but our team could also develop them and have them be reviewed by Andrew Fracknoy and others involved to see if they could be incorporated into the main collection so that this astronomy tool just gets better and better based on community additions. And so that's something that we're really interested in. And if that's something that appeals to you, we're happy to talk about that. And at that point, we will to the question and answer session. One of the first things that I would like to do, though, before we start fielding questions, I'd like to go back to Andrew Fracknoy and ask, is there anything that you feel like that I didn't mention that would be important to let the audience know about?
No, I think you covered things really well. I do want to emphasize what you said at the end, that you've mentioned my name lots of times, and we don't want this just to be an Andrew Fracknoy production. So I've put in a series of questions that I think will be useful to a wide range of instructors, but we're really hoping that just like for the OpenStax book, where instructors from around the country have contributed ancillaries to the hub for the book, we hope that here too, after you get familiar with the system and after you've maybe thought that one of my questions was silly or not appropriate to your class, that you'll sit down and write a better question, and then if it works for your class, submit it for all of us to use. So it would be great to have this also be a shared resource that the wider astronomical teaching community can take advantage of.
Thanks for that addition. I was just looking through a few of the questions that have been handed to me, and then I may actually just have this relayed vocally here in a minute to add to this. One of the questions is, what prevents a student from simply doing a copy and paste of the text? So let's go back in so that we can have a visual with this and have everyone understand what's being asked. So the question would be something like, what's to prevent a student from doing a copy and paste of, say, the text and doing that to avoid the watermark? They're going to be in big trouble if they decide to do that, because whenever you make a copy and paste of this kind of material and you put that into chegg.com, The image, if there is an image that's associated with it, is not actually uploaded to Chegg. It only references the image we have out here. And that same tracking ID that's down below is provided as a token or a tag that goes onto the end of this image name for every student specifically. In addition to that, the space between problem and the number right here is not actually just a space. It's a 4 pixel wide by 8 pixel tall white image that goes there. And that image is a different image named after the tracking ID for every single student. If a student was to take that information, copy it and paste it, or simply grab it like this and drag it over, those tokens come along with it. And then the reference is directly to that student. And so I talked about watermarks, but if you read on our website, we have a whole host of digital tracking mechanisms in addition to that. And that's one of those. So that's a good question. How do drag and drop questions look on mobile devices? Are they easy to complete? One of the things that we've done throughout the history of the company, in physics, we have free body diagrams where students can actually draw forces, move them around. The drag and drop advanced graphical ones are what you see here for astronomy. And we have avoided Java runtime and Flash at all costs. Everything that you see here is done with open source JavaScript libraries and implemented in such a way that it works on iPads, iPhones, mobile devices, or any browser that you want to do. When you open up a question like this, you get an interface, and it's just like doing any other app on your phone. You can grab onto the highest blue shift value, you can move it over with your finger and put it into the right place. And so it's actually an enjoyable experience if students do that from mobile as well. Okay, let's see, additional questions. Can OpenStax be used with high schools, or is it meant for college? Andrew, I'm going to let you tackle this question.
Sure. So, in fact, we know that over 100 high schools around the country are using this, usually for a standalone elective astronomy class. It's wonderful that there are so many standalone elective astronomy classes in the high schools, but absolutely, the book has been quite successful at the high school level, and some people have been using it since the beginning.
Thank you. Before we go to a few other questions that I've been told that we have, one of the things that I'm going to do now is launch 2 polls that we'd really like for you to fill out. So please do participate in these. The first one here, which I'm going to do right now, is the question is about the OpenStax Astronomy textbook. We're interested to know, have you adopted it yet? Are you considering adopting the book? Or are you interested in using Expert TA's online homework system, but with some other text? Okay, the poll progress. It looks like we've got many submissions that are coming in. Just take a couple of more seconds here. Okay, wonderful. I'm going to close this poll out. I'm going to administer the next one, and it's about online remote exams. And this is really so that we know if you're interested in follow-up from us. So let's talk about these. This is whether or not your institution has already put mandated protocols in place, whether or not you're still interested in just learning about what more that you can do. The last couple of questions, we identified even further things with digital tracking that Expert TA is capable of. And if you want to know even more of what we can do, then we'd be happy to share. And in fact, one of the things I'll just comment on really quickly, we're partners, the people in the community. We feel like if we help you solve problems, then even if you don't use the Expert TA system, that's goodwill. And so we are actually building a tool that is Excel VBA based that will help instructors to create exams where every student can have his or her own numbers, and a Word document is generated for each of those. And we'd be happy to maybe share that with you if you think that would be valuable, but you're not in a position where you're going to use an online system. Okay, I'm going to close down this poll. And then there are two other questions that I need to address. Someone said, are there ways in which we can help to track the problems when they show up on places like Yahoo Answers or Chegg.com? And the answer is yes. We've been doing this for over 6 years. We developed a web crawler that goes in, it looks at a problem statement inside of the Expert TA system, and it goes out and tries to find that on a number of sites emphasizing Chegg, Yahoo Answers, and a few others. And when our web crawler finds those, it generates a report for each of these. And then you can see here that I'm inside of main@theexpertta.com, our main email account, and I've searched for copyright agent at Chegg.com. You can see here that we have communicated at least once a week, but quite commonly twice a week for the past 6 years with Chegg. And essentially what we do is we say, dear copyright agent, in the past you've promptly removed our material. We made reports. We appreciate your quick consideration. This was sent Friday at 10:59 a.m. Less than 24 hours later, on Saturday, we got a response saying, thank you for bringing this to our attention. The content you reported has been removed and appropriate action has been taken. Chegg, copyright agent. Now, I want to make sure that it's very clear. This is not just for the questions in our library. If we put in exam questions for you this coming fall, those will be added to our web crawler search feature, and those will be under our umbrella of protection, and Chegg will take those down on our behalf as well. So we have the ability to both keep your solutions off of Chegg, and then through non-empty threats, very real threats to students of we can track back to you via random numbers and other things like that, you can keep students off. Now, one thing that was a question that just came in was, what about problems that don't have random numbers? Well, we do random phrases as well, and those can serve the same purpose so that only one student has a unique set of words used in a problem statement. And just using a physics problem, imagine a problem where there's a firefighter standing on a fire escape. That's the wording for one problem. The next student gets the same problem, but it says a man stands on a fire escape. A woman stands on a balcony. We can put placeholders just like we can for numbers in and allow different words, collection of words and phrases to be placed in. The students don't know which words are being randomized and which words are unique to them. And then you simply tell them for the exam that that's happening. So that's where the random phrases maybe wasn't explained as much, and so there was a follow-up question about that. Were there any other questions? Oh yes, there was a question about bookstore. Yes, when students pay for Expert TA, there's several options. They can pay online with a credit card. They can get a 14-day free trial, which we always offer so students can get in, start doing their work, and worry about payment later. And then there's the option to enter an access code that they purchased at the bookstore. We are for introductory physics with hundreds of universities in the US, and over 80% of all of those have access codes for Expert TA in the bookstore. So we're very familiar with this terrain. We can get the relationship with your bookstore and get the access codes in, and then the students have either that or pay online with a credit card. Andrew, was there anything else that you wanted to add before we close things out?
No, I think we've covered things. The only thing I would say is if people want to get in touch with me, I'm happy to answer further questions about the book or about my interactions with Expert TA. And I know that you are encouraging people to get in touch with you if they have questions. And I've enjoyed hearing about how much your staff is willing to personally engage with each adopter and make sure things are tailored to them. So I do want to encourage people to take advantage of that.
Absolutely. We do strongly encourage you to reach out to us. One of my final comments, one of the things that we pride ourselves on, it's one of our company values, is customer service. If an instructor contacts us with an issue at 10 o'clock on a Saturday night, they are not waiting until Monday morning to hear back from us. If it's an important issue, we're going to be back in touch helping you solve that problem. This has always been something that we prioritize at the company, and engagement with all the instructors it comes right along with that. So please do let us know if there's anything that we can do to help you in any way. As I close down the webinar here, you're going to see a survey that pops up. It's very short. It'll take you 2 or 3 minutes. If you don't mind filling that out, it would be great to get feedback about what you've seen today. Again, thank you so much. We really appreciate all of your time. I apologize for any audio complications that we had earlier. But again, thank you for your time. And we look forward to hearing your feedback and maybe engaging with you in the future.
Take care, everyone. Be safe.